The four ponies were now running from their newly possessed friend, not thinking of where they were going and what they might run into. It couldn't possibly be worse than a possessed bone-saw-wielding maniac, could it? There were twists and turns that never seemed to end, along with the darkness that was all around them. The air around them kept getting colder and colder as they approached Sector C. The door to Sector C was plastered with rust, and was still flaking its way off the door. The four pushed the door open cautiously, knowing there was a chance that there might be more guards awaiting them. Applejack was the first to peer into the damp-smelling corridor to scan for the all-clear. "No pony in sight, girls. Let's get moving." Applejack kept her silenced voice, in case she was heard by a guard or Twilight. The group trotted inside slowly, and shut the door behind them with a small creak. "How's Rainbow doing, Fluttershy?" Fluttershy looked at her fillyhood friend, who was drained of her energy, and looked on the verge of death. I don't know. She's still bleeding from her wing," Fluttershy said, as she pointed at the joint where Rainbow's wing had once been attached. "AJ, we need to help her. She looks like she's dying from the blood loss." A single tear swept down Fluttershy's cheek as she watched her friend's blood spill onto the floor, making stains on her once cyan, and now red, coat as it did so. Tears started to form in the corners of Rarity and Applejack's eyes as well. On the way down the dimmed corridor of the sector, a small rusted sign caught the eyes of Fluttershy. The sign was very rusty, but she could still make out the faint words, "Medical Room," and the arrow pointing left. Fluttershy quickly pointed out the sign to Applejack and Rarity as they immediately set course for the next left towards the medical room. "I hope they have some supplies we can use. I don't know how long she's going to last," Applejack said, concerned. Without hesitation, they picked up the pace and rushed down towards the medical room. It took them a while to reach the medical room from the start of Sector C, due to having to slow up so they could check on Rainbow every once in a while. The panicking group quickly burst through the doors to the room and immediately began to rummage around for anything usable, or at least something to kill the pain or stop the blood. It took them a while to find the medical boxes. They were concealed inside a metal medicine cabinet that was hanging on a wall. The door was almost off, hanging only by one hinge, which was completely rusted through. The box that they grabbed was a medium-sized first aid box that had small scratches on it. Fluttershy opened the box hurriedly and picked out a few rolls of bandages and gauze, and flew over to Rainbow's unconscious body that they had put on the bed in the room. She called over Applejack, revealing the rolls of bandages in her hooves. Rarity was still looking for the painkillers and adrenaline to keep her awake and alive, as the pain was extracted from her system. As Rarity looked, Applejack and Fluttershy tended to Rainbow's bleeding limp joint. They quickly unraveled the packing of the bandages and carefully tied it around the joint, adding on a small amount of gauze to apply pressure to it, trying to make the river of blood stop flowing. Fluttershy stayed with Rainbow beside her bed as Applejack went over to help Rarity find the painkillers. "Rarity, any luck finding them painkillers yet?" Applejack called over. Rarity rolled her eyes. "Ugh, it's impolite to rush a lady, darling," she said in a very matter-of-fact voice. Applejack returned the annoyed look. "Can you please stop being your fancy self for one day? Our friend is dying, and she needs medicine now, consarn it." Applejack was clearly growing concerned, and her voice was showing it, and her eyes were glazed over at the purple-maned and pearl-white-coated unicorn. It took a while, but Applejack heard Rarity confirm that she had indeed found what Rainbow needed. Rarity grabbed them from the cabinet she found them in. Applejack took them from Rarity and inserted the adrenaline into Rainbow's system by injecting it into her tepid blood flowing through her hoof. Just in case anything happened to her, a heart rate monitor was connected to her chest and neck, displaying her pulse and heartbeat. The painkillers were inserted through transparent medical tubing and into a small opening in Rainbow's hoof that was lightly caked with blood. 12 hours later. Rainbow was still unconscious and hooked up to medical tools. Her heartbeat had returned to normal with the assistance of the adrenaline and painkillers. She was in a much better condition than before, but still wasn't waking up. There was something wrong, but what could it have been? Her heart rate was normal, she was stable, and she wasn't bleeding anymore, at least not heavily, but somehow remained in deep sleep. Could it be a coma? No, it just can't be. Was it a lack of blood being pumped through her system? Or severe hernia? Applejack thought to herself while watching her friend just lie in front of her, remaining motionless. No pony could make heads or tails of Rainbow's condition, so they were all startled when they heard a slow whine coming from her mouth. No, leave me alone, Rainbow muttered. Her voice was muffled by the dryness of her throat. There was also a hint of sadness in it. Fluttershy quietly crept towards Rainbow's bedside, staring at her closed eyes. She could see a small tear forming in her eye, and dripping down and off her face onto her bedsheets. Rainbow? Can you hear me? Fluttershy said softly in Rainbow's ear. Rainbow soon began to say strange things in her sleep. No, Twi, leave Fluttershy alone. No, she muttered and turned over to her side. Fluttershy could clearly make out her name, and what she was guessing meant she was going to be next, and froze at what she heard come from Rainbow's mouth. Rainbow, don't worry about me. I won't leave you. Fluttershy remained calm and softly spoke into Rainbow's ear. She quickly gave her a reassuring kiss on Rainbow's forehead. Applejack didn't know how to react at what her friend had said, and instead broke down into tears. Leave Fluttershy alone. She gasped at the realization of what that meant, and managed to stop crying for a little bit of time. Fluttershy, that means you're next. Twilight's going to kill you. Applejack hugged the scared yellow Pegasus, as fear and tears filled her eyes. I won't, AJ. I won't be next. I don't want anything to happen to you, or Rainbow. And I won't leave your side. Reassurance of her friendship for Applejack, Rarity, and Rainbow Dash was the only thing that kept Fluttershy going. Knowing that they were safe was enough to keep her spirits lifted. But would all of her reassurance and spirits stay lifted? Or would it fall down to the point where she would break? Whatever happens, she wouldn't abandon her friends, even if it meant her life.